Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's giving you 2 videos in one today. The first part will be a video essay. The second part will be a review of the album Come Home, the Kids Miss You by Jack Harlow. Hot take, it's going to be a positive review. If you're only interested in the review, check down in the description. I don't know how long the essay is going to be, so just click in the description and you'll get to that part. My daughter's friends, my 14-year-old daughter's friends, really requested that I review this. And that shouldn't be a surprise, and it's also part of the reason why I'm doing this whole review. Now, my review is going to be, ultimately, independent of the discourse around Jack Harlow. And as the newest, biggest face in white rappers, certainly there's a lot of discourse around Jack Harlow. So instead of basing my review on that, I want to just start off with this question, this essay, this title of the title and the thumbnail derive from this question. Is Jack Harlow the Elvis Presley of rap? Now, that is what is called an analogy. I thought about this actually on Saturday morning. My son took the SATs. And I was in the morning, I made him some eggs. Whenever he has a big test, I make him 3 eggs over a English muffin. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him. And I realized that, like, when I took the SATs, I did very poorly. I may be a big brain boy now, but I was not a big brain boy on those SATs. Like, I didn't understand analogies. And most people who use analogies don't understand them either. You see, this is the problem. An analogy is comprised of 4 different elements. A is to B, as C is to D. Analogies are about that is to in the middle. And the key is you have to really understand all 4 parts in order to have a good analogy. So every time a white rapper comes out, there is the discourse, is Macklemore the new Elvis? Is blank white rapper the Elvis of rap? And so we have these 4 things: Elvis to rock, white rapper to rap. And I want to spend some time with it because I think Jack Harlow is probably the closest thing we may ever have to an Elvis of hip-hop, and I want to describe how and why. But first, let's describe Elvis, because Elvis is simultaneously the most overrated musician of all time, a thief and a hack who never even wrote one of his own songs. He has songwriting credit on Heartbreak Hotel, but he probably didn't even write that, and he was a bloated joke at the end of his life, and he worked with Richard Nixon. Ha ha ha. He's completely overrated. Also, he's completely underrated. He was an amazing performer who used his charisma, who used his voice, who used his life experience to literally change the world with his artistry. Now, the truth about Elvis is obviously in between there. He's neither the king of rock, nor is he a talentless racist. The thing that we really need to focus on is this concept that he stole rock and roll from African Americans. And every time that a white rapper has popularity, that is the question. Is this the rapper that is going to steal hip-hop creatively from African Americans? Now, first of all, getting back to Elvis, he didn't steal anything. He was the weapon, okay? He was the pistol that white America used to rob rock and roll away from African Americans. He didn't have some grand plan. He wasn't some studio shill who had some idea of how to take over the world. He was just a guy. And white America collectively, they wanted the butter. There's the have your cake and eat it too is an American expression. Not so good. The French expression is we wanted the butter and the money for the butter. So we wanted this music that came from economic and social conditions without having to face those economic and social conditions. White America wanted black music, but it didn't want black people. Fairly simple, right? I mean, that's really where Elvis came from, beyond the fact that he was a spectacular performer, right? But what's interesting is that, like, white America liked Elvis partly because he was safe, certainly safer than we perceived of a black artist to be. But we didn't want too safe. Weird family lore for you. My mother, and this is not a joke, was the president of the Pat Boone fan club when she was a teenager. So If you don't know Pat Boone, whatever you think of when you think of like the most whitewashed parody of American culture, that's Pat Boone. They would literally take songs by black artists and give them to Pat Boone and say, just make them as safe as possible. Look up his version of Tutti Frutti sometime. It's legitimately hilarious. A womp, bump, a loop bump, a womp, bam, boom. Sorry, Mom. It was Mother's Day the other day. I do miss my mom. I wish I could still talk to her about Pat Boone. It's an interesting story. But you know, America didn't actually, I mean, we did want Pat Boone, obviously. Pat Boone sold more records than Little Richard. He sold more records than Chuck Berry. But still, what made Elvis so good and what made him so powerful was that there was a little bit of darkness, you know? He did come from poverty. He did have his sexy dances which scandalized the world. He was just enough of a bad boy while also being just enough of a good boy. He was right in between those. He talked about church and loving his mom, and he also could sing all these songs that were kind of dirty and raw and actually about sex. So he managed to, and if you might see where this is going, okay? If you know Jack Harlow's music, you might see where this is going. Elvis was able to seem comforting while also being very sexual and slightly menacing. Another essential element of Elvis, he was good, but you know, he wasn't the best. I mean, he was not better than the vast majority of African American artists at the time who were making rock and roll. And really, if we look at the classic era of rock and roll, I mean, he's not better than most white artists. I mean, Buddy Holly? Buddy Holly wrote all that music, had all that, you know, I mean, Buddy Holly versus Elvis, it's not even close. But he wasn't a hack. And that's the thing that happens is when people try to talk about Elvis, they lose their mind. Because they either have to go to Graceland and treat it like it's Mecca, or they have to, Elvis was a hero to most, not to me, straight up racist. Mother F him and John Wayne. John Wayne, by the way, total racist. He deserves all the anger he gets. I don't think Elvis does. So, getting back to my theory here. I was quoting Public Enemy, by the way, in case you didn't know, in case you're younger than 40 years old. So, Elvis was able to give white Americans the thrill of the black genre with the reassurances of a handsome white guy. And through that, we began this process of taking rock and roll. Just completely taking it. Not just financially, but artistically. And that's really the interesting thing, is that it was, for a lack of, you know, with some exceptions, abandoned by creative people in African American culture. Obviously not exclusively. Obviously Jimi Hendrix is one of the greatest rock and roll musicians of all time, and I don't need to get into all the details. But it was in this sort of thievery that America really lost something, that the culture really lost something. And we keep sort of wondering, I keep wondering, is this ever going to happen to hip hop? Is it ever going to happen to rap? Now listen, financially, hip hop was stolen immediately, okay? I mean, it could not have gone, you know, whatever. It was always going to be that way. It's not even a question of race. It's a question of systematic injustice, systematic racism. That means that the people who are in power at all the companies who can afford to buy culture happen to all be white. Not happen to be. We're structured over generations to be white. But artistically, it's just never happened. And in a way, hip-hop doesn't need an Elvis. Rock needed an Elvis. If we're in the 50s, we were never going to have white America embracing Chuck Berry. Right? I mean, he was black. Much of the country was still literally segregated. So, in a way, rock and roll even needed, in a way, Chuck Berry needed Elvis. I mean, thanks to Elvis opening up rock and roll, that meant that Chuck Berry could have a career in front of white Americans. In a way, Elvis really, really helped African Americans artistically by taking such an overtly black art and making it so wildly popular. Okay, so he does also deserve some credit. Okay, so hip hop doesn't need it. It doesn't need it. It is the biggest music genre in the world in most countries, okay, in many countries, I don't know if in most, certainly in America, there was a point where it seemed like, in 1990, it seemed like with Vanilla Ice arriving, maybe white rappers that were created by the studio or pushed by the studio were going to take over. But then, bam, at the same time, another unexpected hero comes up. MC Hammer. Okay, so we had Ice Ice Baby, and then we also had Can't Touch This to make sure that this was never just going to go into there's one way to be a super popular rapper. And then we talk about the audience. Obviously, and recently there was a very, I don't know if you watch Sean C. He's another music commentator, YouTuber. Again, we don't really do the same thing, but I like watching his stuff. It seems recently like he's found a new gear, by the way. If you watched him before and you stopped watching, check out his more recent stuff. He has like a certain strength. He has an entire essay called Jack Harlow is Trash. And even though I like this album and I like Jack Harlow, I don't disagree with anything he says. But part of what he talks about is how the audience for hip-hop is mostly white. And so there's a couple of interpretations of this that I think we can have. There's the less than generous interpretation, which is that white Americans, like myself, who have largely benefited from the systematic injustices and from systematic racism, enjoy consuming the culture that describes the conditions that my privilege create. Okay? There's a great Onion article, the satirical newspaper, that says, local man enjoys, creates the blues. Right? That's a very cynical way to look at it, but that is a valid way to look at it. In many ways, my lifelong love of hip-hop is problematic. Or there's the more generous interpretation of it, which is, hey, over 60% of the country is white, so it makes sense that this great work of art that our country produces, that of the 63%, that many of us would like hip-hop, and it's just a question of numbers. But despite that, despite this huge white audience, despite the financial control being in the hands mostly of white executives, creatively, we never took it away. Elvis could take the oxygen away, but all these other rappers couldn't, and that's why it's so interesting. Because the question is, if every time a white rapper shows up and we say they're the new Elvis, why has it never actually happened? Why does Jack Harlow desperately need the approval of Kanye and Pharrell? So, many white rappers, all white rappers, are eventually called Elvis. And I'm going to illustrate them, not all of them, but many of them, one by one. Beastie Boys, first case. Now, certainly, had they continued on the License to Ill path, they might have been, with their kind of frat boy, turning hip-hop into frat boy rock. Certainly, that could have been. But thank God, they were far too respectful of the art of the people who came before them, and they were far too innovative. No offense, Elvis, but Beastie Boys were way more innovative. Maybe Vanilla Ice, but he just wasn't talented enough. He wasn't creative enough. He was just a studio thing. He didn't have anything on Elvis. He didn't have anything on Pat Boone. He was just a buffoon. I'm rhyming like a balloon. Eminem himself will often call himself that he stole like Elvis, that he's the new Elvis, but Eminem has more talent in his pinky finger than Elvis had his entire body. Okay? Sorry for the boomers that are watching, but Eminem, not only does Eminem have more talent than Elvis, Eminem has more talent than most rap artists. So when we're thinking of the 10 best rap artists of all time, and maybe the 5 best rap artists of all time, it's always going to be a whole bunch of not white people and Eminem. And I think that immediately discredits him from the Elvis conversation. I don't know, maybe Post Malone or Macklemore fits in there, but really I think the closest we're ever going to get is Jack Harlow. Why? Why Jack Harlow? Well, first of all, it's a pretty good sign that my daughter's friends asked her to ask me to review this. Her friends are boys and girls and all that. And he's a bad boy. Jack Harlow's a bad boy. But he's so handsome. And he's so respectful to his parents, but he's a bad boy. He has so much sex. Right? He's not talentless. Not at all. He's probably the worst rapper I've reviewed this year. But hey, I only review good rap albums, right? So that's not saying that much. He's really reassuring. And the main thing that makes Jack Harlow the potential to beat Elvis is I believe he's the first white rapper to properly reflect the white suburban experience back to white suburbanites. I understand he grew up in Louisville and not technically in a suburb, okay? But let's get into a little bit of the Jack Harlow lore, okay? He is the son of two successful business people. Not divorce, not a mom who left or a dad who left. His family owns a Cinerama franchise in Louisville. You can look him up on Google. You can find his parents' names. How many rap artists can you Google the parents' names and see them working together in a prosperous family business? I'm going to guess 0, okay? White or black or Hispanic or anything, right? The story of him and his come up, which is well documented, and to his credit, he doesn't try to cover up. He was 12 years old, and he said, I want to be the best rapper, and he said that to his mom, and his mom just said, well, practice at it, honey. And that's how he did it. He was just sitting in his room, he said, I want to be the best rapper, and his mom said, practice. It's so sweet. I found this 2017 article from, I think the magazine is called Louisville. It's about Louisville, Kentucky. And it describes his life back then when he was like still a teenager. And it's a very evocative thing that really ties into this concept of how Jack Harlow could potentially be the most successful person to take rap away from black artists, because up until now, white audiences, and I assume this will continue, want to see the black experience reflected in the music that they listen to. They don't want to just see their own experiences reflected back at them, which is a credit to our culture growing, which is a credit to the strength of hip-hop. But when I read this thing, it talks about him growing up in this area called Seneca Park, which I looked up the property values. They vary from like $200,000 a house to $1.2 million a house, okay? So he's not growing up in the rough part of Louisville. Talking about how the first rap song that he ever memorized and that he ever loved, I can't make this up, is White and Nerdy, the parody song by Weird Al Yankovic. About how his mom loved rap. About how he has a golden Labrador retriever. A golden retriever. I live in the suburbs. I live in the kind of place that I'm describing. The golden retriever? A golden retriever? How many rap artists in the history of hip-hop grew up with a golden retriever in their house? I am going to guess almost none, at least in terms of performers. His early raps would be about things like liking Febreze. Febreze. That weird spray. That's how real he was in describing his life. But the thing about it is that if this works, I don't, wait, I lost my notes. Sorry, I threw away the other side of my paper. In this 2017 article, there's this whole explanation. After 6 months on Berry Boulevard, Harlow moves into a 2-story house in Germantown purchased by his grandmother, who owns rental property. So really we had the sense of generational wealth. That's another question. How many rap artists, and I mean MCs, how many MCs have that kind of generational wealth to fall back on? This is what he says about being able to stay in this house that his grandmother is the landlord of. Just a better situation all around. My grandmother is the clutchest. It's not hard to understand anger at this guy, because grandmothers are a huge force in hip-hop. But they're a huge force in hip-hop primarily as a reflection of families that have broken down in the American inner city, and the grandmother needs to step in to raise kids for various reasons that reflect poorly on the failures of American society. not on the families, on the failures of American society. But his grandmother is the clutchest. She owns property, okay? And then he even goes so far as to brag about stealing food in a supermarket, like opening up a box of donuts and eating the donuts and then putting them back. And he's like, you can't catch me. You sort of feel this. And you feel this in his interviews too. Like he's trying to see how much can he put on this bad boy, rapper, criminal persona when that's just not who he is. Fundamentally, Jack Harlow and his popularity doesn't really represent so much of hip-hop changing. I think it really shows American suburbia changing, and especially the aspirations of young white kids. I think Jack Harlow is closer to Jake Paul than he is to Eminem. Now, I said I was going to say that. I drive my kids to school, and they were like, Dad, that's too much. That's too much. You can't say that, Dad. You can't call him like Jake Paul. But let me tell you why. Jake Paul is an impressive person. Okay? He is. All these influencers, PewDiePie is an impressive person. These white boys, mostly from comfortable situations, who have all the access in the world, all the privilege in the world, can take that privilege and that access and make something of it. There are thousands, if not millions of people across the world with that kind of access and privilege. Okay? It's not a unique thing. So just because you make it and you have privilege does not mean that making it is not impressive, does not signify something. Now, Jake Paul's story and him making it, that has nothing on, Lil Wayne, okay? Has nothing on most other people who come from nothing and arrive at something. But Jake Paul, Jack Harlow represent people who come from something and go to something. Hip-hop is a music of adversity. And to a certain extent, that adversity is usually seen exclusively through the lens of race, but it's become so much more. It's race and class, but it's international as well. So as when I talk about hip-hop in Ukraine or France, it's not a question of black and white anymore. It's the voice of the voiceless. So what Jack Harlow represents and what Eminem did not represent is somebody who is giving the voice to the very, 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 very voiced. Handsome white guys have never had any problem finding a venue for their cycle. Okay? They've never had a problem finding that. If rap is the music of adversity, then Jack Harlow is the king of no adversity. He even talks about that he was really popular in high school. He can't even do the thing that white dudes like me like to do, where I like to pretend like the fact that girls didn't want to date me means that I really went through something really bad in high school, Divorce, nope. Poverty, nope. Racism, no. Social issues. He looks good. He doesn't even have the adversity of being a childhood star. Because, Justin Timberlake was on this album. I think that's a pretty good comp, and I'm going to do that later. And Justin Timberlake, I feel bad for based on his life. This is just a kid who was nurtured and supported, and everybody loved him, and he worked really hard, and he made it. And the American suburbs are filled with kids like this. My son, my daughter, they have friends who make rap albums, who do all these kinds of things, who work really hard at it and really care about it. And this is like this dream that they could be it. And these kids aren't interested in making rock and roll. They're not interested in playing drums or guitar for the most part. My Morning Jacket, one of the better rock bands of the past 20 years, despite my odd history with them, which I will probably never get into. They come from Louisville. They come from the same place Jack Harlow does, but I don't see a whole bunch of kids from Louisville who are going to start making rock and roll because of My Morning Jacket. So that's how Jack Harlow could be Elvis. And the thing that I want to emphasize is that it can't be done. Rap can't be stolen. It's over. It's over. It actually can't be. The absolute worst case scenario is that there is another stream in the mainstream for privileged white rappers, where Jake Paul and people like Jake Paul can be successful mainstream rappers. Another lane in the mainstream. As a quick note, what I find interesting is there's already a fair number of privileged white producers in hip-hop. Like Kenny Beats, The Alchemist. I don't know about their actual backgrounds, but I know financially. So what's interesting is having someone in front of the mic really changes it, as opposed to being a fan or a facilitator to actually have a star. But it's too late. It's too late. Rap cannot be stolen. So we can just relax. Is Jack Harlow raps Elvis? Maybe. But it will just never be stolen. It just simply, we have gone past that point in society. So I think a lot of the venom that we aim at Jack Harlow, or that is aimed at Jack Harlow, it comes from that feeling, that recognition, like, oh my God, this guy, this could be the one. This isn't a third base House of Pain situation here. This could really actually be the one. This could be the smiling face of death, the hand that shakes, and then the hand that takes. But I don't think so. So let's get to the review, huh? So this album, the Jack Harlow album, Come Home, the Kids Miss You, it's good, okay? It's not great. I don't think it deserves the hate that it's getting, nor do I think it deserves the love that it's getting. It's sort of right there in the middle. It has two primary themes. The number one theme is like, I'm good. Can you believe it? I'm a good rap guy. And then the other theme is, I have lots of sex. And I can break down that theme into two different ways. There's the boy, I have a lot of sex, which is, just I'm a player. And then there's the other part. The girl, I'ma treat you well part. The part where he really is trying to sell himself as a teen dream heartthrob, as the tiger beatist of all the tiger beats, who talks about how he's going to give you everything you want and how you're special. I realized that if we actually take... Okay, I'm super... If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please smash the like bucket. Please comment what you think about my essay on Elvis but I'm gonna be comparing Jack Harlow to two other people. I think part of his popularity is he's like half Pete Davidson and half Jim Halpert, half John Krasinski. Okay, where like the Pete Davidson side is oh, I'm just this white guy in a hip-hop world who just happens to be sleeping with all the pretty ladies. Oops. And then the other part is like this fantasy that can be projected onto him, is like actually he's the sweet guy who loves his family, and he's got a cute little hair. He's just a cute little guy. I think he's kind of in between that. And in a way, he very clearly is following the Drake model. If there's one thing that Jack Harlow could do as far as thievery, is he could steal Drake's lane if he had the talent, which he doesn't. Sorry, not yet. He might get it eventually, probably not. But like a good rapper with a little bit of personal confession, and then a whole bunch of R&B songs about, that vary between the sweet and the sour, right? Like the sour being like, I don't care, I smash all the hoes, and then the sweet, like, I love you so much, I'm gonna take care of you. So let's get into my stamp for the album. It's called Talk of the Town. You just click on the banana up there. You'll be able to hear this song. It's the opening track. I think it's a good example of what's good about this album. The first notes is this nice kind of piano, a very simple, low-key beat. All the beats on this album are very just atmospheric, to the point at times of being kind of Jeb Bushy, kind of low energy. Some good lines. We used to have the same drive, now you're in park. Talks about going back to his hometown. Generally, a very strong verse. Like, I think his verse is good. And what I like about him is it seems like he's aware of the slight corniness of some of his lyrics, and he doesn't care. And I think that's like Drake as well. I think there's a few rappers like that. I think Kanye's like that as well, now that I think about it. Like, where he'll just be kind of corny. And if we're being not generous, and if we see him as the smiling white devil who's poised to steal the music away from the people who created it, then certainly these kind of corny lines are not welcome. But if you just take him as kind of like an interesting kind of goof, I think it's okay. Ironic how I'm the one they miss, yet they target me now. It's a fine line. I like the interpolation of no, 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 yes, yes. God, what's even the name of that song? I was listening to Jammin' 94.5 when Destiny's Child came out, so I should know the name of that song. I think it's called No, No, No by Destiny's Child. I like the kind of chopped and screwed sample of it. It's funny, that's like 2 albums in the last month that sampled Beyonce's voice. And then this interesting line where he says, "Am I the realist?" Jack Harlow, you could have been the realist. You could have. And at times you are the realist. Like when you talk about not drinking anymore, I think that's an interesting thing. When you talk about how hard you work, and that's the thing about Jack Harlow, is he very clearly does work as much as he says he does. But you're not the realist. Because at times, you're fronting. And I'm going to talk to you about when you're fronting. But not yet, not on this song. Next song is called Young Harleasy. I like this sort of outcast light beat. This kind of booms, a little bit sparse. I like the sound of the heartbeat in the beginning. I like how he talks about when you were all with your RPGs, I was selling hard CDs. So this idea that when he was 12 years old, he was selling CDs in his middle school. And that's the thing, the universal thing that is respected about Jack Harlow. And this is what I think you have to respect, regardless of his privilege or whatever. I mean, there have been thousands of white kids in American suburbs who are like, I'm going to be a rapper. But they do it for like 5 minutes and then they stop. And then they go back to playing video games. He really does respect his craft and respect the art. He really does. You can't take that away from him. Like, you can doubt it, but I don't think that's fair. And he just emphasizes his work. And then there's like one of these gratuitous beat changes, which there's a lot of gratuitous beat changes on this album. And it's really cool. Someone, I guess for his birthday, got a cameo from Snoop Dogg. So if you go on Snoop Dogg, I think it's a couple $1,000s, you'll have Snoop Dogg and he'll say like, Happy Bizzle Day. And then you're done. I'm being facetious. I actually like Snoop Dogg on this song, even though he's not credited, and even though it's only one line, and even though he's doing that thing, which is just so annoying. But it's interesting because he says, Jack is the Mac and he's back. I don't know. It just feels off. But I mean, that's how I feel about most of Snoop Dogg's cameos. I mean, it really is funny that you can't actually pay to get Snoop Dogg on the cameo service, because that is how so many of his features sound. But then they had this beat change again. And he says he's not Vanilla Ice or the Beastie Boys, and he rhymes that with got more bread than the Yeasty Boys. Hey, rap guys, rap dudes who are always pissed at me for not saying Nas is number one of everything, okay? Dudes who are just so mad that I don't talk only about the best underground hip-hop stuff. Rhyming Beastie Boys with Yeasty Boys is a good rhyme. It's funny. It's creative, it's memorable, you can hate me, you can at me, you can thumbs down me, only I can see the ratios, but I'm going to stand behind Jack Harlow and his saying, the Yeasty Boys. He does one thing on this song, which is a mistake. He says, am I enough? Am I sexy enough? Am I cool enough? It's a mistake because it doesn't come back. So if you're going to do the emotional rap thing, the emotional post 808, post Drake rap artist, like being filled with self-doubt, don't do it once. Either do it zeros or tens, but not once, because I was expecting more of this on the album. Next song, I Do Anything to Make You Smile, is a song that makes me frown. Okay, that's not on my script. I swear to God, I don't have a script. I have notes. That's not on my notes. Harps and strings and some nice kind of bass work here, but just the title. I do like how he says, the bread keeps coming, Golden Corral. This is where I like what he's writing about, what he knows. What do middle class to upper middle class white kids in American South know about? Buffet meals at Golden Corral. I like that. You know, he's not trying to like put on airs. He's making a cultural reference which people like him will get that other people may not. He like repeats his verse like it seems like, dude, you work so hard. Why are you not do that? I'm a F the earrings off you. And then he's like describing this woman, like how beautiful she is and how special she is. And I swear, this is not the first time I heard the song. I'll tell you where I was. I was leaving the YMCA. I was on the sidewalk, 60 degrees out, in my shorts, going out to the car. And I go, you know what? This is a lot like Ed Sheeran. This is that like I'm in love with the shape of you kind of song. Like this kind of pop song which is just made for the most credulous women to listen to and go, he's singing about me. Why am I being so judgmental? Maybe women just like songs like that. I don't know. Maybe men like songs like that. I don't know. I know I don't like songs like that. So I'll just speak for myself and just say that those kinds of songs, the One Direction, That's Why You're Beautiful, any song that panders to the audience, Bo Burnham makes fun of it pretty well in the song Repeat Stuff. And Ed Sheeran is like the king of it. And so I thought like, oh my God, that's like Ed Sheeran. And then literally 5 seconds later, he references Ed Sheeran and says, I'm in love with the shape of you. So there's the next question. Is Jack Harlow the Ed Sheeran of hip hop? Dude, you literally opened yourself up for that. Like you were like having a sword fight and then you opened up your flank and you were just like, would you like to stab me here? I'm going to reference Ed Sheeran. Would you like to compare me to Ed Sheeran, mean professor guy on the internet? He also rhymes canal with smile. So he really plays up that accent. I don't know. I wonder. I see him speak in interviews and I feel like he is trying to sound as black as he can sound without being called out for it. I don't know if he's speaking honestly, but you hear the way that he talks and it seems like he's trying to see exactly, I feel like he's been like workshopped to see like how can he have a southern drawl that makes him sound like a southern rapper being interviewed without betraying the fact that that's not how, you know what I mean? You know, the ability to switch register, I don't know. I can't tell. But that's what comes up when he rhymes canal with smile. You have to have a certain drawl to it, which I think is affect, but I don't know. Next song is called First Class. You want to see my reaction to First Class the first time I heard it? Sucks. Pop trash. Second time? Sucks. Pop trash. Third time? Sucks. My daughter over there. Is that First Class? I like that song. Yeah. Fourth time. It's kind of sucks. 10 minutes after the fourth time. G-L-A-L. I want to hear the song. The fifth time, I skipped right to that song. I just listened to it on purpose. I wasn't ironic. I didn't say, sucks. The song is a pop song. It's a good pop song. I can't help it. Jack Harlow won me over with this song. This song defeated me. My initial notes was that it's a very Jeb Bush low energy song. Oh, how can we possibly like this song? It's so low energy. It's so boring. He has this weird like flow that's like totally broken up and messed up. And it's like, just try harder. And it's a boring piano line. And he rhymes about drinking pineapple juice so that his semen tastes better. It's just, yeah. And the whole thing is like a ditty quote from like a late 90s Puff Daddy style interpolation of the song Glamorous by Fergie. But when a hit is a hit, it makes sense that it's a hit, and that is a hit. And that's just, I'm powerless. I'm powerless. I'm powerless before a good pop song. And that's a very good pop song. And it deserves credit because it doesn't sound like the rest of the pop songs that are on the radio. It may be that people start reacting to that and I guess you could draw a line between Too Sexy and this, like interpolating a kind of cheesy song that's fairly recent. But still, it's First Class. Is a good song. Did you hear that? That was the sound, the 1,000 voices unsubscribing all at once. Next song is called Dualipa. Kind of a funny idea for a song, like talking about wanting to sleep with Dualipa. The beat kind of reminds me of that Black and Yellow song from a while ago. Cool atmosphere on this track. Just a nice kind of Drake style song with like Drake style rapping and flow changes. It's a good song. I like Dualipa as well. Side piece. You're not going to get me, Jack Harlow. This is a weird song because it's all about how special you are when you're a side piece. And then, hey, DJ Drama, we're like the same age. Can you help your boy out here? Because he literally said, I like the girls that was into Abercrombie. You were around when LFO came out with their song that said, I like girls who wear Abercrombie and Fitch. Chinese food makes me sick. Like one of the worst, most offensive songs of the late 90s, early 2000s. Like the worst pop song. Like seriously, right up there with, We Didn't Start the Fire and Wonderful Tonight. It's like one of the worst songs ever made. And in that song, this kind of faux rapping, hyper white, lame pop star literally says, I like girls that wear Abercrombie and Fitch. And you have your white rapper who's popular with teenage girls saying he's into girls that wear Abercrombie. You're making it too easy. First, you say Ed Sheeran. That makes me think of Ed Sheeran. Now you're saying you like girls who wear Abercrombie and Fitch, and you're making me think of LFO. Like, what's next? This song is just not good. This one is like this. There's just no excusing how bad this song is. This, like, I mean, okay, I guess the way there's kind of like an atmospheric soul, like cut up soul song in the back. It's kind of interesting production on that way. Have you cream filled like a donut shop? Dude, I can't unhear that. It's bad. That's up there. That may be up there for like the worst rap lyrics of all time. Oh, that's gonna engage my audience. Can you please tell me what is the worst rap lines of all time? Put them in the comments. Just so sleepy and boring. Comes up next with Movie Star. I like the kind of simple beat here, kind of like a fuzzy bass. Pharrell comes in talking about that life. A lot of this album is all about like that life, like I'm living that life. Aren't you jealous of my life? Not a big fan of him saying he doesn't need condoms. Like, I don't know. I mean, dude, you have so many female fans that listen to you. And I think, and especially with potential of overturning Roe v. Wade, we probably need to, like, encourage more birth control right now in our world. Am I demonetized? And then we have a line where he talks about, so he has lots of references to Kentucky, and so Kentucky's famous for horse racing and bourbon, and college basketball. And so he says, pour bourbon out that barrel, Diddy Kong. And can I like it? Do I have permission? If I do 10 videos about Mach-Hommy next week, can I tell you that I like the line, bourbon out that barrel, Diddy Kong? Did I just lose all my cred? Another point in this beat change. Next song, Lil Secret. Another garbage song. All about like, oh, you don't want to be see all these songs like To These Lovers. I'm just going to skip it. I Got a Shot, which is produced by Timbaland. And my number one problem with this album is what the hell happened to Timbaland? Timbaland is one of my favorite producers of all time. I think he's criminally underrated. I don't know what happened to him. I think he had problems with drugs and working with Justin Timberlake. But it's this weird sort of like Island Boys reggae beat. And this is the part. Jack Harlow, are you the realist? No. Because you said this line, from the city where they might put one in your temple. Dude, that's not your life. That's not your life experience. You grew up in a stable house. You did not live a life of crime. You were not exposed to crime. You then, by the time you were 16, were popular enough that you knew what you were going to do for the rest of your life. It's okay, man. You do a great job of not being that guy. But you don't need to say, come from the city where they might put one in your temple. Man, I'm so hardcore, man. Don't you know I'm loco? But then there's an interesting lyric later where he says he rhymes Manny Petty. He says he has a Louis bag, but it used to be Eddie. And this is where he is the realist. Eddie, referring to Eddie Bauer. Eddie Bauer bags are not cheap, okay? Like, JanSport bags aren't even that cheap. But he's trying to talk about like how he's come up. But this is the perfect illustration of how he's come up. He started at Eddie Bauer. And then he went to Louis Vuitton. Okay? He didn't start from like an Aldi bag and then end up with a Louis bag. Okay? Next song is called Churchill Downs. More Kentucky references. That's where the Kentucky Derby is. Thinking of my mom again. She loved watching the Kentucky Derby. Another kind of weird, like chopped up weird voice in the background. A pretty good verse from him, talking about the world being in denial. A very sort of interesting verse. I'm a grown-ass man, call me Pops, F around, take your phone, ass man. Again, he's rapping about what he knows, which is good, because what he knows is having a father who is present enough that he will take away his phone so that he can study for the SATs. Wait a minute, that's me. I don't know why his dad took his phone away, but how many rap artists have that kind of relationship with a father figure and a good enough phone to be taken? You know what I mean? Like, it's much better when he doesn't hide his privilege, when he's not talking about like putting a bullet in your temple, man, these rough streets. And then Drake comes on. Drake. Can we ever just relax? Because every time you think you can write Drake off, he does something awesome. His verses on Future's album, at least the second one, was great. This is not only the best verse on this entire project, this is Drake's best verse of like the last 2 years. He didn't just body Jack Harlow, he bodied Drake. I love this verse. I mean, the last one, like, on Future, all my hoes rock Audemars, all my hoes rock Audemars, Rolly, Patek, like, I love that line. But this is like that kind of personal stuff. Like, he does what Jack Harlow doesn't. Cold hearts and heated floors, no parental guidance, I just see divorce, therapy sessions, I'm in the waiting room reading Forbes, abandonment issues, got them treated for. So he's able to go from talking about, like, the hardships that he suffered, emotional hardships, maybe not financial, but emotional hardships, which are also real. And then he just goes on to this, that just brag and brag. 750 for the round, canaries, they glitter in, Manutons, drop trash, you litter in. I'm over-delivering to the point it's belittling. Over-delivering to the point it's belittling is just a great line. It's great cadence, funny. All I hear is plug talk, all I see is middlemen. All I hear is tall tales, but all I see is little men. Just great. I love it. I love Drake. I can't help it. I hate Drake. I love Drake. That's maybe why Jack Harlow is such a good comp to Drake, because like I love him and I hate him. You know, I don't think I love Jack Harlow. I like him, and I kind of dislike him. Like a Blade of Grass is the next song. Kind of an interesting beat, like a whole change. It's actually like a drum beat. But another sex song, another kind of Girl I See You. It's got chimes. It's got Stevie Wonder style harmonicas. It's got Spanish guitar. It's got him singing. Just a little too much going on here. It's cool that he admits to being bisexual and having a boyfriend, which is what I thought. And then I realized it was a conversation song. But I was like, whoa, Jack Harlow, all right. Now let's get interesting here. But it turns out he's just having a conversation song. And then it becomes one of these songs where he's talking about, I can buy you anything. And this is like my number one problem with Drake, is when he sings about getting you out of metro housing. You know, like when he talks about like taking women who don't have much and giving them stuff. It's very predatory. It's not cool. It's romantic to the people who are hearing it, who are suffering and who are in bad conditions, but it's fundamentally transactionally exploitative. And that's one of the main things that Drake deals in. And Jack Harlow does too. Parent Trap with Justin Timberlake is another bad Timbaland beat, which just makes me sad. Like all these like anonymous producers on this album, then I see Timbaland's name and I expect it's going to be a Timbaland beat, but it's just not. Another great specific line, which is the positive side of Jack Harlow reflecting white suburbia or white privilege back to itself, saying he is going where the Karens run their errands at. Like, I'm going to be using that line. Like when I go to the Eastview Mall next, I'm going to be like, they're going where the Karens run their errands at. It's a great line. More like I Got a Great Life song. Then we have Justin Timberlake, who I think is the perfect comparison. Jack Harlow is not Elvis. Jack Harlow is Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake could have stolen R&B. He was trying to steal R&B, or that was the thought that like R&B was no longer going to be a black art because we had this white guy who's doing it so well, and he's taking Timbaland and all these good producers, and he's doing features with Jay-Z, and he seems to be getting all this. But in the end, he was just another popular person who did it, who happened to be white. Like the R&B was never stolen. It couldn't be stolen. And now he's a man in the woods. Harlow references being the prom king. Again, like part of it seems like he wants sympathy for being so unsympathetic. Next song, Poison with Lil Wayne, more like I want to romance you. I love your blemishes. You're so wonderful. I love you and your face and everything about it. Wayne comes on. He's good. Not the best he ever is. Cool kind of auto-tune. Wasn't there someone else last year who talked about I eat so much shrimp I get iodine poisoning? Can you please tell me in the comments who said that? An actually good beat change. And then Jack Harlow talks about the ops wanted an olive branch, but I don't give them. Again, Jack Harlow, dude, I don't think you have ops. The last two songs are great. Nail tech, good beat, these weird horns. I like it when the drums come in. It's a weird flex to be proud of your nails, but okay. Talking about Kentucky a lot. I wish he featured rappers from Kentucky. I like girls that are down to earth. He keeps talking about bow, 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 like implying gunshots, talking about his friends are reloading. I understand he's being symbolic, but again, like if you're not from that life of like where gun violence is an imminent danger, you just shut up. You just don't talk about it. You know, just that's part of hip hop's job, is to remind us of ways that our society has failed, and the prevalence of crack and drugs and crime is the reflection of our failed society. Not the failures of the people who make the music, but the failures of our society. So when you're talking about like I'm reloading and the temple, okay, then it ends with State Fair. And frankly, this is all I want. Like why can't the whole album be State Fair? This is a great song. This is a great song, and it's Jack Harlow contributing to hip hop, because no one can do a song like State Fair. You have to be Jack Harlow to come up with a song like State Fair. It's soft, but not quite boring. He's talking about his life, but he's being honest. For now, I got a concierge downstairs. All my neighbors are gray-haired. They don't recognize me, and I don't think they care. But my postmans can't believe I stay here. I want to go back to Kentucky and shut down the State Fair, visit my old teachers, and tell them to take care. This is realist, right? He just wants to go say hey to his teachers and be a popular, happy rapper guy. He still has a kind of teenager dream of what it is. He even goes on, don't get offended if we meet and I say, what's your name? I've been flying around the country for 300 days. I like his atmosphere and who he is here. And just kind of saying he wants to be a returning hero to his home. And that's what it is. And isn't it great that he succeeded? Because he wanted something, he worked super hard at it, and then he succeeded. And that's the story of Jack Harlow. Thank you for watching my video. Please do leave comments. Let me know what you think of Jack Harlow, of Sean C., of Elvis, of Pat Boone, of... Did anyone else release any music lately? Let me just check here on my other phone. Kendrick Lamar. There's the camera.